Hey everyone, welcome to the GTraderPro Weekly Futures Forecast. I'm Gil. I'm here every Sunday to help you get a head start in the trading week. We're going to take a look at some key markets, the upcoming events this week, and setups we're watching for. So let's get right into it, shall we? Let's take a look at the ES. Now, as we closed out the week, one of the things we talked about coming into the week was the advance that we expected. The advance did occur, and on Monday we opened up. We talked about last weekend testing 59.57 this week and potentially getting up to 6,030 before there was a reversal. As you may recall, last weekend we talked about the weekly top coming in this past week. That top came in on Tuesday. They did not reach, however, 6,030. They only got up to 59.92. It was an interesting level just above there, but we did get the top on the weekly chart and we did reverse. What we said last week was the market would come down and in the decline would easily test 58.70, 58.68, which it did. And if that failed, we would test the very important 58.14, which you may recall. This all happened into Friday, and the market certainly declined much deeper than that, but notice that they closed right on 58.14 area. So that's where we closed out the week. So as we begin this week, it's a holiday shortened week. Of course, we've got Memorial Day. We've got durable goods on Tuesday and the second read of Q1 GDP on Wednesday. So we've got a couple of key reports coming up in this holiday shortened week. Now, if we continue to close daily above 58.14, we're going to look for some re-advancement, a bounce. So we've come off of our top on a weekly chart, and we've come down and hit a bottom here from a daily perspective. So what we should be getting under normal conditions is a multi-day sideways to higher move, heading back on up. Natural place for the market to go back up to is 58.57 once again. So on the upside, daily closes above 58.14 will re-advance. One of those re-advancements would first get back to the same 58.68, 58.70. And again, if they can get back above that level, once again, they'd be testing this week 59.57. So retracing back up into last week's high territory. On the other hand, if this is not going to be the bottom, and if we're going to fail and close below 58.14, it does open up quite a bit of potential downside. I'm not really looking for that, but there is some chance that we decline further well into the 5600s. First stop would be about 57.05. Again, the normal thing for the market to do now is to have a multi-day advance this week, a multi-day sideways to higher move. The bottom should be in on a daily basis, so therefore we're looking for this week to primarily be to the upside. But again, very interesting completion on Monday and Tuesday of last week. As we said, they would top, decline. Now this decline should lead to a multi-day advance, and that's the ES. Let's take a look at the Nasdaq. Nasdaq had a really nice week. We said last week, coming into last Monday, that they would advance and come back up into the 21,550, potentially 650 level. All right. Here is Tuesday the 20th. Here is Wednesday the 21st. And as we can see, we once again put in this double top up here on an intraday basis and a daily basis on Monday and again on Wednesday, right up against 21,545. We talked about this price a week ago as this is what they wanted to test with the potential for 650. They too did not quite get to 650, double topped at the 550 level. And as we said, a failure up here, once again, in the NASDAQ, a weekly top would sell off. First place they would come back to easy was 21,220. And then they would decline this week to 20,950, which is exactly what they did. And by the end of Friday, they closed right sitting on 20,950. Kind of a neutral, right on it type close. Now, this is a critical price as we come into Tuesday. On the downside, if we get further downside, if this level fails, we should see 20,647. Not a huge move, but the potential exists. Again, if this is not a bottom on a daily basis, then we're coming down to 20,350. This is normally, again, like the ES, this is normally going to provide a multi-day advance or sideways, but advance off of this area, assuming we close here. Again, market will tend to want to retrace 21,250, 21,270, and then potentially, once again, right back on up. So they may not be done with this 21,550 and 21,650 off of this bottom that should be in place from Friday. If we are closing below Friday's low on a daily basis, it is a very poor showing for the Nasdaq. Same with the ES. If we start closing below these lows, then it does speak to a failure on the daily, continuation on the weekly, and we move down a pretty good amount. So again, it's going to be a very critical start to the week on Tuesday and Wednesday. And again, watch this critical price here, 20,950, and very important, watch the low from Friday. That is a very important price level as we go into the week. Two of the really most exciting indexes were the Russell and the Dow. Let's go to the Russell. Now, we said coming into last week that the Russell would attempt 21,140. And as we can see on the 15th, 16th, and here is Monday the 19th, this is what occurred a week ago. And then as we came into this week, they again closed below 2112. That was very important as we wrapped up last week, that they closed below 2110. What I said in last week's video was daily closes that continue below 2110 would easily test 2088, 2036, and the potential existed to come down deeper. The first of the deeper levels, 1985, and as we can see here on the daily chart, that's exactly where they stopped. So they came down very nicely, completing a good chunk of what I was looking for last week in the Russell with the daily close below 2112. Now again, this 1985, 1986 level is very critical on a multi-day basis. As long as we're closing multi-day above this level, the Russell 2 has a multi-day advance coming off of this bottom. And ideally, we continue to close above 2036. And again, maybe no huge advance, but 2088 and 2112 become back into focus on the upside. This is what we'd be looking for under normal conditions. If, however, we close daily below 1985, and like the Nasdaq and the S, close below that weekly low on Friday, then we've got a real big problem on our hands in the Russell, and it would be quite likely that they would decline down to 1884. A pretty good decline for the Russell. This is a very critical price then as we come into the week. My eyes will be on 1985, 1988. Daily closes above that would be, again, looking for a multi-day advance. Ideally, they close above 2036, an even better signal there for some advance. Let's go to the YM. The Dow was really the best of the four. We talked last week about the advance up to 42,900, and as we can see here on the 19th and on the 20th, that's exactly what they did. And we said they were going to fail there at that 42,900. They would fail there on the weekly chart and have a multi-day decline. And indeed, they failed beautifully, coming all the way down. As I mentioned, they would come back down to 42,000, 41,700, with the potential to come down to 41,300. YM had one of the best reactions from the peak level. They reached their critical peak level. As I said, S&P came up a little shy, Nasdaq came up a little shy, Russell nailed theirs, and the Dow really nailed theirs and had this beautiful, beautiful decline. So we encouraged shorting in the YM all week long. That level was going to fail and give a beautiful multi-day, and the entire week was to the downside. Now as we go into this week, again, the Dow should have a bottom on a daily basis. This is, once again, very critical for the YM to close daily above 41,320 in order for that to be valid. Best case, 41,700, and we continue to close above there. First area they're going to have to recapture here is 42,050, 42,040, and close back above there. If they can pull that off this week, then we head right back on up to the 42,666, 42,700 level this week. This would be the normal place, the normal direction, again, for the YM, as with the three other indices, would be to the upside off of this bottom. Like the others, if this bottom is violated, we've got a pretty good sell-off on our hands, easily down to 40,800 and most likely 40,470 to 40,500. So again, very critical week coming up. Normally for the four indices, we're going to see some multi-day advance and some bounce off of these bottoms. These bottoms, these lows that were put in on Friday in each of the four indices are very, very important. Let's move lastly to gold and crude. Gold was spectacular. Here's a 2-hour chart of crude. Now, one of the things I said in last week's weekly preview was 3,245 was going to be a super critical level. If we continue to close daily below here, we would revisit back down to 3122. I had said, however, if we could close daily back above 3245, then gold would advance and would run to 3359 to 3360, which is exactly what they did. We alerted our traders in the live rooms in GTraderPro on Tuesday that it appeared a strong move above 3245 was underway, and we were no longer interested in shorts. We had to shift to the long side of the market. Traders got long, and what a beautiful multi-day advance to the target. Was a fantastic spot-on completion. They ran up there Friday morning in beautiful fashion. So I was very pleased to see that outcome. And again, we had to wait and see. Failure here, we wanted to be short. Once they could break back above here, we had to let go of the idea of being short and embrace the long side of the market. And what a beautiful completion. Shows the importance of really understanding critical price levels. Oil, range bound. Here is crude. And one of the things I talked about a week ago was continued daily failure at 62.85, 62, call it 63. Daily closes below here. And again, crude should continue to decline and test the $61 level. And for the most part, that's exactly where they spent the week, closing daily in between these two prices. With a good spike up on Wednesday, but notice they could not close the day out above 62.85. So we've been range bound with daily closes being contained between these two levels. These are critical. If we start closing daily now below $61, we would continue to think that the market would continue to progress lower this week with a direction to 57 and change. However, if we ever were to close daily above 62.86, then it really does open up the market considerably. As we said last week, a strong daily close above this level begins an uptrend to 68. So we really do have the market making a decision. We can see the consolidation in between these two prices, where there's a major target of 68 or a major target to the downside of 57. My gut, if you will, would tell me that longer term, the market is very weak, and so therefore I'm leaning towards 57 as opposed to heading up to 68. The long-term outlook for crude is much weaker prices. $50, $49, $48 crude is coming most likely later this year. But in the meantime, we are contained daily between these two prices. So we'll need to see a breakout above $63 with daily closes to be bullish, or we'll need to see a good failure below $61 to target. In the meantime, we'll just trade within the range. And that does it for crude. Well, I think that wraps it up. I'd like to thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss an update. And we invite you to join our free Discord community for daily insights, trader chat, and the link is in the description. And by all means, come in and request a trial of the live trading room. Visit GTraderPro.com for one-to-one training, tools, resources, and be sure to follow us on social media to stay connected with the GTraderPro ecosystem and learn more about what we're doing. And thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Let's have a great week.